In studio for the full hour, Congressman Brad Wenstrup. Welcome back, Brad. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure's mine, Brian.
Nice being here in the Cincinnati area as opposed to Washington, D.C., isn't it?
You got it. There's a mood swing that takes place.
And I know you're looking forward with great anticipation your post-representative career. You're stepping down. You're retiring from Congress, and that kicks in, January, right after the president's sworn in, whoever that may be?
Well, it's before the president's sworn in. So Congress changes over January 3rd.
Okay.
So January 2nd would be my last day, officially. I got some things to accomplish, as you know. We talk about it all the time, the things in researching the pandemic and all the ill effects, I guess, besides just illness, but and government ill effects.
One of the things I wanted to dive right on into because you have been investigating Dr. Fauci, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the gain of function research that was being done there, the origins of the COVID-19 virus. Was it naturally, bat in a cave kind of thing, or was this created in a lab? And I've been thoroughly convinced from the outset this was a lab-related thing. And as your investigation is uncovered, we did, in fact, fund our taxpayers. You took some of my labor and you converted it into a grant that went to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, run by the Chinese Communist Party, to tinker around with bat DNA to make it more likely to transmit to a human being. I mean, that's really exactly what happened, boiled down into its crassest terms.
Yeah, but don't say you did. And look at me.
No,
you know what I knew.
You are my illustration of government here today as an elected official. I know you had nothing to do with it, and this preceded you. You weren't even able to know what it was about. This is the problem.
Yes.
The elephant in the room is you're looking into it, and they are basically raising their metaphorical middle finger to you and all the other people who are providing oversight, not providing you information. Duck, dive, dodge, dip, and duck, or whatever the 5 Ds of dodgeball are. I mean, you practically have to go to court for literally every document you want. And lo and behold, looks like, they in fact gain of function research.
Yeah, we end up issuing subpoenas. Why should Congress have to issue a subpoena to get information, documents from a government agency? They're not over us.
I know.
We're over them. And as we were talking offline, the answer is, and Congress needs to do this more and more, and we've been doing this with the Intelligence Committee in a bipartisan fashion, by the way. We've been saying, you don't give us the information we want, then we're withholding dollars. That's the power of the purse. You start telling HHS and these other agencies that are stalling us, that are trying to block us from getting information, you say, that's fine. You no longer have to exist. You no longer get money. You can defund parts of an agency. And we need to start doing that.
Well, is this built in? Are those words to that effect built into the legislation for the funding? If they do not cooperate, then X will happen. Because you always have the power of the purse in Congress. Therefore, the threat is always there, but it's a non-threat because you're going to have bipartisan support to withhold funding from any agency. And once funding's in place, it's going to be for next round of budgeting. So they're going to have to wait to heap down the wrath of Congress for them denying the information. But if it's in there already, that you have the power to do that with the flip of a switch immediately, then you get more.
Yeah, it needs to be there in advance. Now, you are seeing with EcoHealth Alliance, which is the agency run by Dr. Peter Daszak, who was doing gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, and we'll get in, hopefully, today, some of the things that he's done that have him in tremendous hot water. But now they're debarred. Okay, now you can no longer have any funds going to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's not enough, but that's a start. And we didn't do that. That came from the agencies. We need to do that. We need to have these things in law. The process for grants has to be revamped. We have about 8 suggestions already that actually empower Congress, but also put in a check and balance that's much greater. And the process, and I take you through maybe in the next section or something, Brian, the process for the grants is so bad. And it is so aloof, and it is so dangerous.
Well, this is how you end up with American taxpayer dollars funding, shrimp on treadmill. It's funding the study of transvestite prostitutes in China. I don't think I made that one up. I think that's actually a real study, like depression in transvestite prostitutes in China. I mean, there was really the shrimp on the treadmill thing. That was a study that was done. Craziness.
These are not things the American people want to have done with their tax dollars.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And it's as if the Congress, obviously, and the presidents, the administration, every administration, this isn't a Republican or Democrat, spends way more than is taken in. And this is an area where I think we could do with some cutting.
And by the way, in my mind today, any potential benefit from gain-of-function research that you're trying to get, which is trying to predict what kind of virus may evolve out of nature. Well, let it evolve out of nature rather than creating it. But you can do this stuff with AI today. We start to know the components of a virus that make them more infectious to humans. And if you start to see that, I'm for surveillance in nature to see what may be coming and what's happening, H5N1, avian flu, all that kind of stuff that affects our livestock and things like that. We need to be doing those types of things. But we don't need to be creating the next virus that can do more damage just in hopes of creating a cure for it. You can kind of predict now, I think, through AI what might evolve, and then you can put in place what we might have to be able to do if it does.
All right, fair enough on that. Doing gain-of-function research was verboten, right? They weren't allowed to do it.
There was a pause on it, supposedly a pause on it, but it got reinstated. That's a whole other part that you're going to see in our report, because Peter Daszak, who was in charge of EcoHealth Alliance, the pause was put on him, basically. He then worked with people within the agency to figure out what to do to get it reinstated. We now have those Gmails. Gmails is the key. Why wasn't it on their official emails? Because the person he was working with, Dr. David Morin, said, don't write me on my official email anymore. Go to my Gmail, because these blankety blanks are FOIA-ing me, Freedom of Information Act, are FOIA-ing me all the time. So go to my Gmail and I'll delete anything I don't want seen in the New York Times. Well, guess what? We just got 30,000 of his Gmails that we started to go through this week.
Yeah, well, it doesn't shock me because Meta keeps all of that information.
Yeah.
The parent company has it. If he's dumb enough to use Gmail, the guy's a pure idiot.
You can't believe it. And even recently in the Gmails, they're talking about how they need to protect Tony.
Tony Fauci. I was wondering when his name would come up in this discussion. Why would you want to protect him?
That's a good question. Maybe because he controls their payroll. I don't know, but it's very interesting.
But this guy that was in front of you the other day that was talking about this gain of function, the guy who's in all these emails, Gmails, going back and forth, is he going to be held out as the scapegoat or the sacrificial lamb for his head to be offered up and in order to give Fauci a pass?
Well, Democrats were going after him too. But, by and large, I think, Brian, because we have dug so deeply that they realize there's just too much out here for them to even begin to protect him as a member of the administrative force of the HHS, right? There's just too much out there. And I think they're pretty disgusted with what took place. Well, now we'll see what they do going forward with the connection to Tony Fauci. But they clearly, in a bipartisan fashion, we were revealing so many of the things that Peter Daszak has misrepresented. And so there's contradictions within his testimonies compared to real evidence.
Well, I can imagine them not wanting to be blamed for literally shutting down the globe and literally millions and millions of lives lost or otherwise destroyed as a consequence of these ridiculous governmental actions during the lockdown. Congressman Brad Wenstrup will continue. We have a full hour in studio. Got other topics to talk about too, but I promised Maureen I would ask you about vaccine injuries that we are now becoming more and more aware of. And when maybe did the CDC know about these? Did they know about them ahead of time? Authorization, emergency use authorization, etc. Stick around for that with Congressman Brad Wenstrup. 5 City Talk Station. Brian Thomas with Congressman Brad Wenstrup in studio. Appreciate his willingness over the years to come in studio and have face-to-face conversations. And let us not move away yet from COVID-19. Of course, we talked about gain-of-function research. It seems to me that you're finding out more and more, even including bipartisan support that, yeah, we've got some heads to roll on this one. It does look as though conclusively it came out of a Chinese lab. Why were we tinkering with it when they weren't supposed to be doing that? On and on and on. But pivoting over, so they create a virus in a lab. Then, of course, magically, the pharmaceutical companies come out with the vaccine that we all have to have or we're going to lose our jobs. But it was issued under emergency use authorization, which means the pharmaceutical companies can bring this out without fear of liability. Unlike every other medication, which comes with warnings and comes with a stage 9 gazillion clinical trials and making sure everything is okay and they've identified the risks, it's a very small percentage, which allows then the drug to be issued along with the warnings. We got none of that with the COVID vaccine.
No.
And they're free from liability. And lo and behold, we come out with myocarditis. We've got the list of problems that they have linked with this vaccine it's just getting bigger and bigger. The injuries that are springing from having taken the vaccine.
Yeah. So let me start with the premise that I said, even under the Trump administration, to Secretary Azar, Trump's HHS secretary. I said, America needs to be hearing from the doctors treating COVID patients. They need to be hearing from the doctors who's at the bedside. The doctor who says, I have nothing else, but let me try ivermectin.
Right.
Right? Let's hear from those people as opposed to a politician or the government entity that exists in the lab, but is never bedside, never trying to take care of people. And I'm saying that passionately as a physician.
Yeah, diagnosticians.
Because that's what matters. What's working, what's not working. So I was for the emergency use. Why? Because we showed during the trials a couple of things, some alarming. One, you get the vaccine, you're still liable to get COVID, but you are less likely to be as sick and hospitalized. Those numbers were real. That we knew who was at risk. So the emergency use initially was really targeted for those that were dying left and right. And let's not forget how many millions died. So it was like your only chance of living if you get COVID. And so I was for that, but never for mandating and never for kids and all these things where you really didn't see a risk. We took the doctor out of the relationship with the patient through this whole thing. Think about it. And so that became a huge problem for it. Adverse events. We've always had in place a system that is supposed to look at adverse events. We just haven't had a vaccine, a new vaccine in a long time that was controversial. mRNA technology is brand new.
I know.
So you don't know what it's going to do long term, and you have to be honest about that with the American people. You say to this group, you're likely to die because of your comorbidities if you get this, because that's what we are seeing. But there may be some side effects long term. The stuff with myocarditis, like you mentioned, I had a guy call me. He's a county commissioner. He says, the school's making my son, get the vaccine. And I said, is he healthy? Yeah. Does he have any comorbidities? No. But they're making him do it? Yeah. I said, okay, well, here's the deal. The myocarditis is coming on after the second shot. The kid's 18 or something like that, 17, 18 years old. It comes after the second shot. What a logical doctor would say, if we want some coverage, just do the first shot, because we're not seeing myocarditis after one shot. And besides, with Pfizer, your coverage, your immune response is the strongest after the first shot. And that should cover you and give you and buy some time. But you shouldn't even...
I mean, real quick here, because we're out of time. But that person does not have a comorbid conditions, therefore is unlikely to have any death or serious problems from getting COVID-19, which you're still going to get if you get the vaccine. So how about natural immunity? How about just go ahead and get COVID since there's no risk of death? You'll have natural immunity. Don't take the damn vaccine.
We ignored that. We ignored processes like treating people with convalescent plasma where somebody got COVID, recovered, and they have the antibodies, and you can take it from them. And we were doing that at the beginning. That went away. Everything became the vaccine. But going to the question you were asking about adverse events. So the VAERS reporting system, vaccine adverse events reporting system, allows, and this is what's public, and this is the problem, allows anybody who's had I got a toothache after my shot, put that on there. That's public. What's not public is when these adverse events have been thoroughly vetted by physicians who say, yes, this seems related. No, it doesn't. But either way, let's record the numbers and go further. That data is kept private. It should be the other way around.
Exactly.
It should be the other way around.
We need the wheat, not the chaff.
Yeah. So these are the things we want to put in place to start to change. But not only that, we need to really process this. We need like a reserve corps of experts that can go through this, because you go from maybe 4 adverse events from vaccines a year to 100,000.
Right, because people are now looking to the vaccine and its connection with any one of these things. Real quick here, because we are out of time. Who would stand in the way of letting us, the public, have that wheat versus chaff information? Why wouldn't someone allow that? Who is saying, no, we can't for whatever reason?
I don't know that anyone's really saying no.
Okay.
It's just stupid the way it's set up.
Okay, granted. That's okay. Then we'll just leave it at that. I thought maybe there was an advocate for, no, we can't let these people have it.
No.
All right.
I haven't seen that. I might find that as we move forward.
As you move forward, exactly. Wait for it. It'll happen. Congressman Wenstrup in studio. Just real quick here to put a close on and move away from the vaccine conversation. Are you aware, are you investigating whether Big Pharma, the inventors of these vaccines, had any knowledge, inside information about the problems that have been identified since, whether it's on this VERS system or not, the myocarditis and some of the other more significant problems that people have had as a consequence of the vaccines? Any understanding that they knew about that in advance and didn't warn anybody or tell anybody?
I would tell you that I had a one-on-one conversation with the CEO of Pfizer, for example, which is probably the most well-known of the
Moderna, Pfizer, sure,
and discussed that, and I said, are you being responsible in the way that you should, like with any other drug? When you watch a commercial, right? It lists all the side effects.
Right.
And we can have a conversation about the commercials themselves. I think
I know.
If you want to advertise in medical journals and go in and talk to doctors about what your drug can do, that's one thing. But this, anyway.
Yeah, I know.
You know where I am on
yes,
that.
I do.
But you're obligated. You are obligated to do all these things. I said, because the problem we have today is you have politicians, for example, mandating a vaccine. He isn't going through the list of potential side effects, is he?
Nope.
And,
and depriving us of a choice on whether or not we want to go ahead and take it. Isn't it supposed to be for our own good? And the nonsense that you've got to do it because you're going to spread it to your neighbor or something. When you can still get the damn virus after taking the vaccine, that argument gets thrown out the window. That was the most offensive thing I've ever heard, I think. You have to talk about the reality because, look, in this pandemic where so many people are dying, they're not just getting sick, they're dying. And so there's a tremendous fear. And I get that. I think we all had that. And so many people lost loved ones. At the same time, you have to be realistic. Why? I go through this debate with my ranking member on the committee, Democrat. He's an emergency physician. I asked him to be on here because I thought that he would be a good partner in this. Right. And, he keeps saying, the vaccines are safe and effective. And I said, you can't say that because you know what the public hears? 100% safe and effective. Exactly. And they know that's not true. They know it's not true. It's like any other medicine. You have to explain the benefits versus the risk. And that hasn't been done. Joe Biden comes out and says, if you get this vaccine, you won't go to the ICU and you won't die. That's not true. That is not true. Because some vaccinated people went to the ICU and died. So this was just so mishandled. And that's going to be a big part of our report is like the lack of honesty, the willingness to omit information and actually talk about this. Risk versus benefit is always a decision the doctor makes with their patient, right? Yeah. And then they decide what they should do. And this is crazy. But from the pharma side, what he said basically was, we're doing that. In anything we put out, we're talking about side effects and this and that. And I started to pay attention, and they do. But they were more than happy to let that narrative go on. Well, they could have made public statements themselves saying, I don't think they should say that. Yes, exactly right. Right? Then again, see, this is guilt by omission, if you will. Indeed. Well, and, bolstered by the emergency use authorization. They don't have to tell you when they're free from liability. The reason they have to tell you when they run a damn commercial is because they're going to be liable for failure to warn if someone takes the damn medication and expires as a consequence of it. See, they can remain silent. They can let you guys, not you specifically, Brad, but anybody go out there and say, you must do this, and they just say, okay, yeah, I'm free.
Well,
I don't have anything to worry about.
You know what? Part of the consent with patients should be understand that there's some unknowns with this. You're taking it in hopes of saving your life, and we get that, and that's a conversation you have with your doctor. They're not liable because we don't know long-term all the adverse events and all the risks that may come with it. Look, I'm convinced that this vaccine and mRNA technology has tremendous potential going forward, but we have to be honest about it. And at the same time, we didn't do the right messaging as a country,
no.
and it was very unfair to patients. But know the risk, know the benefits. We didn't do that,
and it came at great cost because now people have a much broader skepticism of vaccines.
Exactly.
Generally speaking, you have undermined one really important component of medical care,
and that lack of trust was earned.
In spades, it was earned. 736 55 KRCD Talk Station. Oh, we have so much more to talk about, and we will. We'll continue with Congressman Brad Wenstrup. Look here, one of the things I hate to bring this up since you and I were just talking about it. China makes everything. We got a real problem with China. We're talking about them hacking. They got a 50-to-1 ratio on their hackers to us. They're stealing our technology. They have designs on Taiwan. They're funding our enemies, and they're providing rockets and missiles. I mean, they are our enemy. A biggest existential threat we face is not Russia. It's China. Feel free to disagree right now. Are you believe me? It's China rather than Russia.
I've been saying it for years.
They make all our stuff, Brad, all of our pharmaceuticals. What we found out during COVID is we don't make anything along those lines.
Yep.
All the precursor ingredients that go into these pharmaceuticals are made in China. Don't we have a threat with that alone? I mean, hell, they're shipping fentanyl via the Mexican via Mexico into our country.
So I've been working on this for years, and even in uniform, because I was on the working with the Defense Logistic Medical Supply Chain Council, and we started looking at every drug that we get and use. Where does it come from? All the way down to the active pharmaceutical ingredients. What is our risk? Look, we saw 250 Americans die about 15 years ago because heparin coming
pig blood and vats
China
in the open sun in China
was contaminated. We had a general get his prescription, retired general get his prescription filled at the military treatment facility, and it contained rocket fuel. He got sick. These types of things have been going on. And we got to divest ourselves away from this. Mark Cuban actually may be able to help us on that, but that's another story. But yeah, this is a true concern. While the Democrats were in charge of the Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, everything was Russia. Trump's in with Russia. First of all, that was all fake and a lie. But secondly, we kept saying, we're letting China go. We got to be looking at China as Congress and as a country. And now here we are. So I have the Biosecure Act, which we'll be putting out next week, that begins that trend. And I've had conversations this week with people from the bioscience sphere.
Right.
And we're working on a plan to make it feasible for them to do it. Look, everybody went to China because it was cheap.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
And we're going to have to gird our loins and be willing to pay more for pharmaceuticals because they are manufactured here, where it's more expensive to manufacture for a multitude of reasons.
Well, and quit regulating ourselves out of business. You know, if there's things you need to mine, but we're not allowed to, but China does it all around the world, that's a problem. We got to start in that direction too. All
right, let's take an early one minute early break because FISA is on the topic of list, and I promised my listeners you and I would talk about FISA renewal. I have a conversation with Judge Napolitano fairly regularly about that topic, and I know you and I have come to different points of view on it. There have been some reforms, though, that Congressman Wenstrup wants to let you know about. First, 748, 55 KRCD Talk Station. FISA renewal. 1974, I guess, is when it all started, and of course, there has been renewals of it. It allows them to listen to foreign nationals in their conversations with us. And then I had these conversations with Napolitano over the years, Congressman Wenstrup, and the extension seems to be the problem, where that predicate, having to have a discussion with someone from foreign lands who don't have any Fourth Amendment protections, basically negates our Fourth Amendment right to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures. And, you got to go in and get a warrant. And under normal circumstances, Brian Thomas, as a U.S. citizen, you can't just tap my wire. You got to have a reason to do it. You got to go to court and say, hey, look, we believe he is engaged in criminal activity. Here's what we suspect. That's probable cause. Judge stamps it and says, go ahead. That is not required in connection with these FISA-related conversations. But go ahead and
so first,
in the time.
First of all, when you said it's an extension, Brian, 56 reforms. This is not an extension. This is a reform. Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act. That's the combination.
Well, you can call it whatever.
No. Words matter, Brian.
I know.
Words matter.
Inflation Reduction Act.
So what your listeners may hear. Yeah, Inflation Reduction Act, right?
See, that's why
but your listeners were here. Oh, they just extended the same thing. No, we did not. Let me tell you, someone sitting on Intelligence Committee who spent his life concerned with America's rights and liberties and our freedom and our security as a soldier and as a member of Congress and being on the Intelligence Committee. Remember, we started investigating the Russian collusion that was narrative. What we discovered along the way is Trump didn't do anything wrong. The Democrats did. We saw that the FISA court was abused. So we just said, we are now in the majority down here, and we are going to take some action and start to reform these things so that there are criminal liabilities for actions taken that were wrong, especially like the FISA court. Any abuse of these capabilities needs to be a criminal charge. We have now put that into law. But here's the bottom line, and people can decide what they want. You can decide what you want. Judge Napolitano can decide what they want. But let's let people know the whole story. So if you just come on and say they have the ability to spy on Americans without a warrant, okay, let's talk about that. No, if you want to dig into Brian Thomas's information, that you need a warrant and you need probable cause. That didn't change. But the ability to look into and spy on bad actors, foreign actors in foreign lands, we can't give up that capability. Why do you think we know that the Ayatollah and the Iranians had a plan to assassinate Mike Pompeo, who now has 24/7 security?
I don't think anybody's just saying that we shouldn't have the ability to listen to foreign nationals. They don't have Fourth Amendment protections.
Right. So in that process, though, we're talking about Mike Pompeo.
Yeah.
They could be talking about Brian Thomas.
Yeah, but you guys wouldn't be paying attention.
Now, wait a minute. Let me finish. You have this tranche of data that you have acquired legally of foreign sources. You're not digging into the person they're talking about. You're digging into those talking about it. If you have a group saying the event at Ohio State Stadium this weekend ought to be something, and we've got everything in place, don't you want to investigate anybody else foreign bad actors talking about Ohio State Stadium? So you start going through your data. Is that do you need a warrant to look at why they're talking about Ohio State Stadium? You shouldn't, because time is of the essence sometimes. Now, you want to look at anybody associated with Ohio State Stadium that they mentioned by name, you need a warrant. So there's a difference between a query into intelligence that you already have. It's just like any of these articles you have here. You're like, gosh, I know I have an article on that. I guess I've got to get a warrant to look for it. You already have this legally acquired information that you're looking through. If you want to look into that U.S. citizen in some way, you need to get a warrant. So there's a difference between a query and an actual investigation into somebody like a U.S. citizen. A query into the intelligence you already have. Now, if you think that just because they mention a U.S. citizen, you should get a warrant to look into the information you've already gathered from actively known terrorists and bad actors,
no,
go ahead.
The source of that information is not tainted. You got it from a foreign national.
Right.
If there's a foreign national, and you don't know if he's a terrorist or not, I mean, how do you identify who a terrorist is?
We have a pretty good idea.
Well, no, I'm just saying, that, listen, I got a friend in France, I mentioned before, French citizen. I went to church with him here. He's a U.S. citizen originally, went and married a French girl, became a French citizen. He's a foreign national. He could have turned into a terrorist over the 20, 25 years since I've seen him or since he moved away. I don't know. but he's a friend of mine. I don't know him to be engaged in terrorist activity, but, I did talk to him over the phone, and I do exchange messages with him from time to time. As a matter of fact, coincidentally, I got an instant message from Facebook from him this morning regarding, the status of some law here in the United States. So, that opens, they could be looking at Darren. Why is he communicating with the U.S. citizen? I don't know the scope and breadth of this, but I know with artificial intelligence, the ability to capture all of that has increased geometrically.
Right, and that's why we want to make sure that these things are being done right, because you just can't go fishing. You just can't go fishing into your friend. You just can't go fishing into Brian Thomas.
Well, one can, but it's an insurmountable hurdle. There's no protection for foreign nationals, which means, yes, I can go fishing into every foreign national over whom I have a communication.
But understand, look, people don't have time to waste their time going when you're truly looking for the threats that exist on Americans. And yes, we have bad people in our agencies, but not everyone. We went over to the FBI twice, the entire committee, to see the process. And you know what? We didn't like it. And that's why we made changes. And yes, you have to be looking at, we have terrorist watch lists, right? We got the problem at the border, and we get reports every day. There's 100 people on the terrorist watch list coming through the border. Well, how did they develop the terrorist watch list? Those are the people we're looking at. And if they're looking at other people, they shouldn't be. And so when that type of thing is being done, now we have criminal penalties against the people in the FBI, which never existed before. Not only that, we reduced the amount of people that can do a query, the reasons you can do a query, okay, but without a warrant. And I will tell you, John Ratcliffe, these are all Trump administration people. Robert O'Brien, NSA director, Devin Nunes, former Intel chair, all people under Trump. They have all said that a warrant would delay our abilities to protect Americans. But you do need a warrant to spy on people. Now, so we can disagree on that, and we can extrapolate that somebody might do something wrong within the FBI. But now, 56 reforms. 56 reforms. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No.
And oversight. And they have to report every one of their queries, Brian, to Congress. Every one of their queries. That didn't happen before. So what you're saying, I get it. I don't want that to happen, and that's what we're trying to prevent. But putting a warrant on that increases the risk to American lives.
Putting a leash on Big Brother.
Well, that's what we did. I'm going to leave.
See how it works out in practice.
I'm going to leave with you these. Well, what else can we do?
I don't know. I'm not saying the endeavor wasn't a worthwhile one. You discovered, and we know of the abuses to the process that went on. They were spying on journalists, for God's sake.
I get emotional because I spent the last 2.5 years working on this with other members of Congress because I have the same anxiety and disgust as you do. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
All right.
Fair enough. I
Love you, brother.
That. Love you, man. Always. And I appreciate you coming in the program. I know you're going to continue to do it until you retire, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're in town, we get an hour for Congressman Wenstrup in studio.
I'll do it afterwards.
Oh, even find out what you're going to be doing post-Congress. Thanks again, Congressman Wenstrup. Brad, it's been great seeing you, brother. 757, 55 KRC Talks.